It's the Sittin Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
And welcome into the Sittin Sportside podcast, the last preview of the NFC, and of course, as we said at the top of here, the NFC West preview. And Cody, as we do for most of these podcasts, we start off with our fourth place team, except for the AFC East. And if you haven't heard those or any of the other podcasts, you can go to youtube.com/team1045 to watch those, as well as go to 1045theteam.com and see all of our predictions that should be up by Thursday. We'll say that. Fourth place team, NFC West. Cody, take two. Let's go.
This is really tough because I think there's two teams in this division that really don't have a chance to win it at all. And picking between those, you really don't know what you're going to get with either one. But fourth place, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Rams because this was a team that a year ago I thought would at least finish in third in the division, which they ended up doing, but they lost twice to the San Francisco 49ers. So I'm going to give the Niners a little bit of credit because Kyle Shanahan's the new head coach. I think that his offense will be fine. It's the defensive side of the ball that I worry about the most, and I'm not sold on Jared Goff as the quarterback right now. I get it. You had Sammy Watkins. You've got a wide receiver. You've got Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive linemen in the game right now. But I don't think that they've got enough weapons. And you love Todd Gurley as their running back. But for whatever reason, this team has just failed to put it together year after year. And it was the same story when Jeff Fisher was the head coach. It was, oh, this team's good enough to be 8-8 every single year. And obviously that caused some issues. Jeff Fisher responded to that. But I just can't see this team faring very well. So I've got them fourth. I mean, I don't see them beating Seattle in either of the two contests. And I mean, you look at the start of their schedule, they get the Colts, Redskins, 49ers, Cowboys, and Seattle as their first 5 games. I think they'll match up well with a Colts team without Andrew Luck. The Redskins, I don't see that being a win. I think Kirk Cousins flat out better quarterback right there. I think Washington would be favored in that one. Then you get the 49ers, and take your pick. Todd Gurley, Carlos Hyde. I think that becomes a battle for the running backs.
Can I take my pick, Cody?
So that's what I think. I think the Rams come
there we
fourth.
go. I'm sorry. I mean, that is the show. You can give you a good chunk of a minute and a half there to go on that real quick. Now, I'm on the opposite of you. I'm going Rams third place and San Francisco 49ers in the fourth place. I agree with you 100%, which we seem to agree except for maybe one or two divisions of the top two teams of whether they're going to be a certain two teams. You might have them in different orders, and it's been the same thing with the bottom two as well. This is where we're going to differ with the orders. I'm going to say the Rams are going to be better. I love that defense. You mentioned Aaron Donald could be one of the best defensive players in all of the National Football League, right there with J.J. Watt and Von Miller. And then they have other players. Like I got to be remiss if I don't mention LSU Michael Brockers, as well as another linebacker, safety turned linebacker Mark Barron. Right, he's been a success, I believe, moving from safety to linebacker. And I think that this Rams team, you bring in Sean McVay to run this offense, and you just kind of made, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you made that kind of comparison of Kirk Cousins to Jared Goff. I don't know if you did it on purpose or just because they're playing each other, but McVay, right, used to run the offensive Washington, right? So, right, I'm right on that. Yes. So I don't know why I'm going to.
You got that deer in the headlights.
Shanahan was Atlanta. So at first I was like, wait, Shanahan, because of Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, and then I was like, wait, we're just talking about Shanahan and the Niners, but he was with Atlanta last year. So my brain now is 100%. Yeah, McVay. So it was interesting that you made that comparison because Kirk Cousins was the quarterback for McVay in Washington. He's going to try to do the same thing with Jared Goff. I liked Sammy Watkins. I think Sammy Watkins might have his best statistical season, and he might even get a fat contract after this, which could open up things for Todd Gurley. So I think this offense could be new and improved. And like I mentioned, that defense, they bring in Wade Phillips to be the defensive coordinator. That's why I like this team to actually be kind of maybe an 8-8 type team and really put together possibly a surprising, strong start to a season and be a team that people are talking about in early, late September, early October, saying this is a team that could possibly compete.
What do we think, before we go on to third place, although you already said it, what do you think about them switching up the helmets? Going from the gold horn to the white horn like in the old days?
I feel like a lot of teams are mixing things up with the new jersey.
Yeah, Nike decided to change a few things on the uniforms. They're getting.
Right.
I like the flywire around the collar. I thought that was a cool design. Apparently,
Listen,
a lot
we
of
had
people
the
hated
whole
it.
Adidas, backed out of the NBA, right? So I believe was it Nike that took over NBA?
I believe so.
They come out with all these new jerseys, and I know a lot of people just kind of ooh and ah over them. I'm not gonna ooh and ah over it until I feel like I see them on the court. I don't know. That's just me personally. I mean, I look at them, but I haven't. When they release 32, it's like when the Vegas Golden Knights came out. That's the only one I really have to. I mean, I know the NHL also kind of rebranded their jerseys too, but when they released the Vegas, I was like, all right, that's the only one I have to look at. That's a new team. When they release them all at once, I'm like, that's just way too much jerseys to look at. I think I've seen the one you're talking about, and I like it.
Yeah, I think the navy and the white, the way that they've done it.
You're not in St. Louis anymore.
And I think that the way that they've done the navy and the white, like the old time, obviously I get it. The technology with design and stuff wasn't that great back then, but I think they did really, really well with the new logo and stuff like that. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to. Obviously, my third place team in the NFC West is my own San Francisco 49ers. I'm excited about Kyle Shanahan. I think him and John Lynch were a good pairing, and I was waiting to see what kind of moves they did, and they were about as active as you could possibly be as a new tandem in a front office like this. They go out, they get veterans they need to. My favorite signing, well, two of them, was Elvis Dumervil on the defensive side of the ball. I loved when he was with the Denver Broncos. I thought he was great as well with the Baltimore Ravens. He'll be able to teach these young guys how it's done.
Solomon Thomas.
And then on the offensive side of the ball, they get Kyle Juszczyk, probably one of the better fullbacks in the league. They steal him from John Harbaugh's Baltimore Ravens, and I think he's the kind of guy who you turn to a lot. Short yardage situation, he's another guy who you could throw to out of the backfield. He gives you a lot of options there. Brian Hoyer is kind of hit or miss. I mean, he's been with, I think NBC went over this, like 5 different teams and however many, or 7 different teams, something like that. I mean, the guy has been all over the place, and he had his best season statistically under Kyle Shanahan. So it's just a matter of, is this going to work out? I think the offense, like I said, is going to be fine. The defense, still skeptical. I think it has a lot of holes, especially in the secondary, that need to be worked out. But I think this team could, potentially, if things go right and if Kyle Shanahan has a trick up his sleeve, they could win 6 games. I think that's about their max, but who knows? If maybe if the young guys...
And even if that's so, I do think the Rams will be better than that, personally. So I have suspicions about that defense. I think the offense will be better. But what do you see? I know you brought up Kyle Juszczyk. It's every ounce of my body wanted to pronounce the J. That's like the biggest change on offense other than Pierre Garçon. So and obviously Brian Hoyer. But do you think that's enough to make this offense that much better? Because the biggest excuse for Colin Kaepernick was he didn't have a lot of weapons around him. If you put Colin Kaepernick, so say Colin Kaepernick had opted into his deal, and I think a lot of people kind of forget that he gave up being a San Francisco 49er and being employed in the NFL. I think that's a big part of the story that, obviously, we had a whole podcast on that about a month ago. You can find that on youtube.com/team1045. It's a different story. But if he had opted in, do you think that this team is that much more talent-wise offensively this season than it was last year?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's talent has more talent to it, but to me, everybody is expecting Pierre Garçon to have a great season, and I'm a little skeptical of that. This is another veteran wide receiver who I think is towards the end of his career. I think he's coming in more like an Anquan Boldin, but I think Anquan Boldin you knew was going to be really, really productive. I think there's questions around Pierre Garçon. I get it. He's had a great career to this point, but he's the guy that you're going to lean on to carry the load, basically, as far as your receiving core goes. I don't know that he's the guy that I would have turned to do that, but that's the decision they make. Carlos Hyde can really carry the load out of the backfield, so I think that the running game should be strong.
Right. I'm a believer in Carlos Hyde. It's just I feel like he's kind of been given the, really since his rookie season, the runaround of, we'll probably get him out of here. I mean, I've always kind of felt that way, that they're trying to get him out for a long time, and it's only in his 3rd year, I believe. So
yeah, maybe a little bit. I just think they haven't really had a plan. I mean,
right.
Chip Kelly was your coach, and Chip Kelly, of course, you knew was going to run the ball a lot. I think Kyle Shanahan's offense, the way what we saw with what he did with the Atlanta Falcons, I think he can balance it a lot more between the run and the pass, and I think that's what's going to allow Carlos Hyde to be a better back in the new system.
I think our fans know that you're a Niners fan at this point because we spent about 9 minutes on the bottom two teams, and we have yet to get to the top two, which is going to be ultimately the two teams that are going to be the most important coming out of this division. Now, I don't remember what you said in the past podcast. I've already used my wild cards up with the Cowboys and the Vikings, and I'm looking at these two teams saying, why did I do that? I'm going to stick to them. That's what my guns say. I'm going to stick to them, I guess, right now, but I really like both these teams to possibly be playoff teams. And that being said, I'll just say my number one team. I don't see the Seahawks not making the playoffs, so I have to put them 1 and Cardinals 2. And as much as I want to change it, I don't know who I would take out, Cowboys or Vikings. And even with our NFC South preview, I wanted to put the Buccaneers in there too. There's just a lot of good teams, obviously. So I'm going to stick with those two wildcard teams. But on to the Seahawks, man, I just think you look at what they've got from top to bottom, whether it's offensively or defensively. They have a lot of weapons that I think are going to do a great job. And then they bring in Sheldon Richardson. I know there's suspect about his character there, but as being a big Jets fan, I know the talent of Sheldon Richardson. So I know that that's going to be a huge part, and that's what they like to do as well in Seattle. So add that to an already potent defense. That could be a scary prospect. The biggest thing, though, is keeping Russell Wilson upright and making sure that he's healthy for the entire season, and that's what's going to get them to the playoffs because I think that everything else in their games, their running game, whether it's going to be Lacey, Rawls, or Procise, or even this other kid that they like, there's maybe not a number one solid guy. They're not going to have like a little Lynch back in the day, but I think they're going to have enough options to get it done in the running game as well. And then the passing game, I think, with Doug Baldwin as well will be good. Jimmy Graham's still a nice little dimension that they have as well. So I'm going to put Seahawks number 1.
Yeah, I have the Seahawks number 1 as well. I think we got a taste of what the Cardinals truly are last year when they missed the playoffs. I love Bruce Arians as a head coach. Don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the most innovative and exciting guys as far as play calling on the sidelines, and he's proven that he's one of the best in the league. I mean, what he did with the offense in Indianapolis while he was there, when he took over for Chuck Pagano when he was out, and now what he did in the first few years he was in Arizona. But I just don't see them rebounding strong enough to make the playoffs this year. I mean, and then you talked about Seattle, their running game. I'm a little skeptical on the running game because, it's, like you said, there's not a clear-cut number 1. I'm not sold on Eddie Lacy. I thought even when he was losing weight to try and get in shape with the Green Bay Packers, he still didn't pan out as well as he should have. I think we're going to be seeing either C.J. Procise or Thomas Rawls really doing the majority of the running for them. And then the wide receiver core, Doug Baldwin, a lot of people say, well, he's not that great of a wide receiver. I think Doug Baldwin's one of the best wide receivers right now. I mean, watching him play against the 49ers, he always... Definitely. He's the guy that is going to be open whenever Russell Wilson ends up being able to scramble out of the pocket. You can almost guarantee it, and that is what makes Doug Baldwin lethal. And then you look at what they've got around him. You talked about Jimmy Graham, Tyler Lockett. I mean, he's coming back. This is just a really, really dangerous offense. And then the defensive side of the ball, the Legion of Boom, for the most part, still there. Richard Sherman, and I think he's going to be the guy who keeps Sheldon Richardson in check. He's a really smart guy. I love listening to the things Richard Sherman says, and I think he's going to be the guy who's going to be the captain out there and be like, look, man, we're not going to tolerate that here. We can't afford to take penalties.
I could see that, but I've kind of thought that maybe it'd be Michael Bennett because it's the same defensive line. He seems to kind of step up and be a leader for that team. He's an outspoken guy. Both him and Sherman are both outspoken, so maybe both. I can see both being.
I can see that, yeah. And then you've got Cam Chancellor in there as well. So
right.
This defense is still really tough. I think it has weakened a little bit, but I still think that it's just too good to not win the NFC West.
And we'd be remiss not to mention Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. And then Earl Thomas, we don't really know how he's going to return from that injury. I mean, he was contemplating retirement at one point last year. So we don't know exactly, like you said, the whole LOB without Earl Thomas, though, is a little different animal than with him, obviously. So there's some concern there. But other than that, it's still a defense that's well intact and ready to go for the season.
Yeah, and I just don't think the Cardinals... I mean, I like Tyrann Mathieu in the Cardinals defense. I think the Honey Badgers finally shown, hey, I have what it takes to be a really successful NFL player, but that defense...
Did you hear what Gus Johnson called him?
No.
Oh, man, I don't even know if I can repeat it, but he totally butchered his name doing the call. I believe the Texas A&M... I think it was Texas A&M UCLA over the weekend. One of the two games, he was comparing a player to... Tyrann Mathieu, and he totally butchered the name. It was really funny. And Tyrann Mathieu actually tweeted about it on Twitter, so it was really funny. But I agree with you. I mean, I think that secondary, and they've always feuded, right? Them in Seattle.
Yeah.
I think you can put them up against each other. I like, obviously Patrick Peterson too, and the LSU connection as well with Matthew. There's still a great secondary there, and the defense continues to, I think, be a really good team, a really good defense for Bruce Arians, but more specifically James Bettcher, the defensive coordinator. But that, I think it's all, to me, for the Arizona Cardinals, it all comes down to what Carson Palmer is. I think there's enough there with this team that when they were the number 2 seed a couple years ago, it was because Carson Palmer had a good year. The down year last year, Carson Palmer had a bad year. So I think it all comes down to the quarterback play, and that points to, in this place, Carson Palmer and backup Blaine Gabbert this year. I mean, it's always been Drew Stanton, but now Blaine Gabbert would be the backup. Because I think you're almost guaranteed to see one game of Carson Palmer out. I feel like it's kind of how it's been, but I'm not going to try to put that on him. But it's his quality of play as well as quantity of play with Carson Palmer, because he gets injured throughout the year. So I do believe the Cardinals could be a playoff team for sure. I would not be shocked. And I think David Johnson I think he's the best running back in the NFL. You can obviously say Le'Veon Bell as well, but I put David Johnson. I love him. I love the guy.
I give him the edge right now only because you always worry about those guys who hold out as long as Le'Veon Bell has, and I get it. He wants more money. The guy has proven that he's more than deserving of it. Let's not forget Larry Fitzgerald is still on this Arizona Cardinals team, and this is one of your most durable wide receivers that we've seen in our lifetime. I mean, some guys are skeptical on him because, hey, that elusive injury might be looming for this guy, and it hasn't come yet, and he's always produced, maybe not as much as the last few years, right, but he's still a very dangerous threat, and he could carry this team as well.
And it's sad to say that, Anquan Bolden's retired, and that was more for personal reasons. He said, he probably could have played this year. But, that was once an amazing duo out there in Arizona. It's been a while since that was the thing, but when I look back at Larry Fitzgerald, I always think about Anquan Bolden on the other side. To think Bolden's gone, Fitzgerald might not be far behind, so hopefully the Cardinals can have a good season in what could be his final year, but he's very guarded about his future. So it'll be interesting to see that as well. I think we really went into this division and kind of tackled.
Yeah, it's kind of a lackluster division, I think. Except for those two teams, but I think there's a huge separation between those two at the top and those two at the bottom. So
we tackled it, and we did a great job, if I say so myself, Cody. We have one more to do, and that is the AFC North. The rest of them are already up on youtube.com/team1045. As I mentioned previously in the podcast, we're going to have previews of all of us here at the station of who we think is going to win each division up on 1045theteam.com. Look for Gaz's info on 1045theteam.com to see that article. So for Cody Marshall, I've been Eric Hemmond. Thank you for listening to the NFL preview podcast, or the Sittin Sportside preview podcast of the NFC West.